I mean, it's hard on me, but he doesn't release the information to me in a timely manner. And he knows that kind of puts me, it's almost like a trial. I mean, it is a trial. Sometimes, you could do whatever. You could fast, you could pray, you could sanctify, you can do all kinds of burnt sacrifices. I mean, my dog looks at me and says, I'm not a sacrifice. You can't do that. So all week long, and sermon after sermon, he will wait. No, not Friday. No, not even Saturday sometimes. Saturday night, I mean, Sunday morning, I'll be in here 5 o'clock. Come on, you got to give me something. And he does every time. So this time, I'm caught off guard because he gave it to me like a month ago. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? This is good stuff here. What are you doing? And I didn't even know I was going to be preaching here coming up. So it was kind of neat to have him put something together in advance, but at the same time, it's like, this is kind of weird. I'm not used to having all of my ducks in a row a month in advance or weeks in advance. And even this time, my daughter, she says, well, Dad, she wanted to put together some PowerPoint and everything, so we've got even some slides and everything, and so that's kind of neat. So this morning, we're going to be talking about holding it all together. Holding it all together. How many are good at holding it all together? No. We think we're good at holding it all together. I know people in this church, they're not here this morning, that think they're good at holding it all together. Hopefully they'll listen to this broadcast on YouTube and they'll know who I'm talking about. They think that they're so good at keeping things all put together. We had a picture I was going to be putting in here, and it was going to be of duct tape and baling wire and these atrocities that we hillbillies put things together with baling wire and duct tape. Man, I mean, you can fix anything with that. And we stand back and we look at that and we go, yeah, that's good. That'll work for years. I'll never have to get another one of those in my lifetime because that baling wire is going to hold it together, that duct tape. And that's what we do with our lives so many times. This morning, we're going to have the first part of this segment. We're going to be talking. This is going to be 2 parts. It'll take part this week and next week. So to hear the very end, you got to come back. At least you guys, come back, please. I'm begging you, come back next week. So this first part is falling apart. Falling apart. How did everything get so bad? These are the famous words that many of us have uttered in our mind, in our voice, in that moment that we look around at our life and we see everything falling apart. We thought we put so well together. Whether it's a family, whether it's a job, whatever, we look around and we say, how did it get so bad? How did everything get so bad? How did it fall apart? So how did everything get so bad? Many of you in here are looking at different portions of your life, and you remember saying that. Maybe you're going through it right now, and you're saying, yes, Pastor Steve, how did it get so bad? At what point did everything seem to turn for the worse? Well, I'd like to be able to stand here and say to you that your situation was avoidable. Oh yeah, I'm looking at your situation. It was avoidable. And show you the exact point that you should have zigged when you should have zagged. That exact point when you should have said no or yes. Well, the truth is that yes, some of what we go through is brought on by our mistakes and choices that we we make, yes. There are some things that happen in our life that are like that. In fact, Proverbs 14:12 tells us, it says, that there is a way that seems right to man, but its end is death. Okay, so yes, there are some choices that do affect some of the situations in our lives. But although that's true, there are some situations that are a soup sandwich, that are a hole, that are a pit, a whirlwind of destruction, and they're unavoidable. You're going to go through them. We have to realize that you were not meant to be able to escape or even see situations that are falling apart coming. They're going to happen. They're going to come from nowhere. And they are there for a purpose. They are there for a very important part of your life. We're going to be taking a look at one chapter in the Bible that has in the amount of verses that are in it, there is so much in it to learn about God. It is amazing. It's one of the most amazing chapters in the Bible for learning about God and learning about holding it all together. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 21, and we're going to be looking. There are 3 stories, and we're going to take 2 weeks to discuss these three stories. And for the most part, we're going to be staying in Genesis, maybe bouncing back and forth between a couple different chapters within Genesis. But we're going to be taking a look at a couple people's lives. One of them is Abraham and Sarah. The other couples is Hagar and Abimelech. Abimelech. And I want you to realize that the situations that have befallen these people, you're going to be able to relate to. You're going to have some way to say, hey, I understand what that individual is going through. And you're going to be able to know exactly what to do. When this is all said and done, when you come into that whirlwind of destruction, when you come into that soup sandwich, I mean, know what a soup sandwich is. Man, I know. The only other military person in here knows what a soup sandwich is. All right, good. Take a sandwich, nice bread, maybe even toast it, I don't know, and then take chicken broth and then just set it in there. Let it sit there in it. And then try to pick it up and eat it. That is falling apart. That's a life sometimes is a soup sandwich falling apart. That's a soup sandwich. I can't believe you guys didn't know what that is. Just use a spoon, dude. All right. Genesis chapter 21. We're going to be looking at Sarah here. God is going to be talking with her, talking to her. The next chapter of this book of Genesis, chapter 22, starts off, now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham. This chapter here is not about Abraham. This is about testing Sarah. Abraham's faith was very strong. It was very good. God knew that. God is the one that issued the portion of faith to Abraham. This situation here is dealing with Sarah's faith, her time in her life. Not just Sarah, as we will see, but also another lady. But let's take a look here. We're going to start with the very first verse here, and then we're going to take a look at some things here. It says, the Lord took note of Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. What did he promise her? Genesis 17:16 says, I will bless her, and indeed I will give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Genesis 17:21 says, "But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at the next season, or at the season next year." So he has already promised some things. Years prior, God has already come to Sarah and has already said, "Hey, these are the promises I'm going to give you. These are the things, this is my word. I stand by my word. I'm going to say these things, and you could take them to the bank." Genesis 18:14 says, "Is anything too difficult for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Not only did he give her a promise, but he said, when? He said, "I'm going to do it at my appointed time." Genesis, we'll go to the next verse down in chapter 21. It says, "So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the appointed time which God had spoken to him." When everything's fallen apart in your life and you look around and you say, "How did everything get so bad?" And you start looking back through your life and you start looking, maybe I should have done something here. Maybe I should have done something there. You have to understand something. Our timing is not God's timing. There's two sets of times. There's two separate times of, or two separate time zones. God's time zone and our time zone. This is how come when we try to do things in our timing, that we arrive at different points in different situations in our life, because God's timing is on a completely different time zone. I don't know how this happened, and being as technologically advanced as I think I am, I flipped open my laptop the other day, and I was looking at my schedule in the office, and I looked, and it said it was Tuesday. This was, and I know that it was. I could have swore it was Monday. It was just Sunday. It was just Sunday service yesterday, and I came in, and my computer said it was Tuesday. In fact, the web browser that I was in that had a calendar said it was Tuesday, and I go, that can't be. Did I lose a day? And I went into Michelle and I said, "Michelle, what day is it?" "Well, it's Monday." That's what I thought. Maybe we're both in a time zone that's weird, you know, and I'm thinking something's wrong here. Somehow, and I don't know how, but my computer had changed days. It had set its own day. And I don't know how it did that. So I had to physically go in there and change it and say, "No, today is the 1st. Monday, the 1st. And then it fixed everything. You know, all the web browsers, they, "Oh, yeah, you're right, it is the 1st because you say so." And, you know, it's so quickly we can have, and if it was Tuesday, I had missed a whole bunch of things on Monday that I was supposed to do, and I didn't do them. It's so important that we realize that the appointed time and the appointed structure that God has is completely different than ours. And if we're not on His time zone, if we're not in His timing, you know what's going to happen? We're going to miss things. We're going to miss opportunities. We're going to miss the great blessing in our life that God is trying to do. Sarah has every reason to be freaking out. She has every reason possible to be freaking out right now. Here she has been given the responsibility as Abraham's wife, a great man in those lands, admired by many people, and she is his wife and has not been able to give him a son. Now, Abraham has done great things for many people in that land, and he was looked upon. People were blessing him and telling him, God's hand is for you. God is really got his love on you, and you are blessed by God. And here Sarah has to hear this over and over, and she is barren. Not just barren, she's old and barren now. That is got to be very heartbreaking. Verse 3, Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, and as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. That's an understatement. You got to realize something. She is, can you imagine? I mean, do we have anybody in here that's 90 or older? 90 or older. Okay, how about 90? Would you say 90? Who's 90? 90. Well, all right. Now, can you imagine at that age, 70, even 70, 80 or 90, at that age, all of a sudden finding out that you're pregnant? Can you imagine what that must be? You might be, and not just pregnant for the first time. Now, go with me in your mind and think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to the bones of the body when I give birth? This child's going to turn me to Jell-O. This is, no wonder she's laughing. You're laughing. God was doing something in Sarah's life. God needed to bring Isaac into that family with both parents full of faith. Abraham's faith was strong. Sarah's faith was needing to be tested. She needed to have a mother's test put on her. Hebrews 11:11 says, by faith, even Sarah herself received the ability to conceive even beyond the proper time of life, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Sarah's faith was tested beyond what she thought she could do. That's why she laughed, because she had faith. She needed to have that faith tested. That child needed to be born into a family that was full of faith, that they would be able to say, your God, our God, is a God of his promise. Genesis 18:11 gives us an understanding of how old. It says, now Abraham and Sarah were old. That's pretty old. Advanced in age. Sarah was past childbearing. Think about this, people. Her world is literally falling apart. I am this old and I am pregnant, and I am going to think about the young women that are thinking their world's falling apart sometimes when they get pregnant. They have no idea. Be glad you're having it when you're young. What if you were 80, 90? That is catastrophic. That is in your mind. That is unfathomable. But God is able. God is able, according to Hebrews. He says that Sarah herself received the ability to conceive. Her faith is what set her apart. Verse 7, Genesis 21. And she said, who would have said to Abraham and Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. And we go on, the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Now Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian. Now remember the story. We will be, we're going to, later on we'll go back and tell a little bit more about Hagar next week, but we're going to go into the story of Hagar and her son Ishmael here in just a moment. But there's more to the story too. But remember that Sarah didn't take a look at God's time zone. She wasn't on the same time zone with God, and she began to panic and said, hey, I'm going to make this happen. Abraham, take my maiden Hagar here and conceive a child with her. You got to have an heir. And so her time zone got messed up, and she wasn't on the same clock. And so here we have Hagar, the Egyptian, who was Sarah's handmaiden, had bore Ishmael. And at this time, Ishmael was about 8 or 9 years old. He's what they call a lad. And in Hebrew, that would give you a designation period of time between 6 and 9, somewhere around that age, I would say. Okay, and it says that she bore Abraham. It says, now Sarah, verse 9, saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she bore to Abraham, mocking. The boy was mocking. Therefore she said to Abraham, drive out this maid and her son, for the son of this maid shall not be an heir to my son Isaac. This matter distressed Abraham greatly because of Ishmael. He's already grown fond of him. He's already begun to have a relationship with his only son at that time, until Isaac was born. Many years now have passed, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years of getting to know Ishmael. And this began to distress him. Listen what God says. But God, in verse 12 says, but God said to Abraham, do not be distressed because of the lad and your maid. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her, for through Isaac your descendants shall be named. Sarah's still being tested. At this point now, Sarah has got a choice here. I'm going to send her out, keep her in. Now remember the story before, Hagar left, and God said, no, go back. And we're not going to talk about that right now. We'll come back to that later. This time, she's being driven out. Abraham's sad. And so Sarah is now seeing the distress of her husband, having to make a choice of sending out this mother and young boy on their own. So this is beginning to be a test to her as well. This is where the story gets very interesting for Hagar. Verse 14. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took the bread and the skin of wine and gave it to Hagar, putting them on her shoulders, and gave her the boy and sent her away. That word sent is very important. It's not like, get out of here, go on. I don't care which way you go. The word sent means a direct location. She was told to go a specific place. That way, this way. I want you to go a bearing of 175, 5,000 miles this way, whatever. Okay. He was given a direct place to go. And this is important because what we're going to learn is something about where he sends her, that these three stories really, and you will see the book of Genesis and so on, really surround what's happening here. It says, gave her the boy and sent her away, and she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. Okay? Beersheba is a specific place. Now, you got to realize something also, that these stories are not chronologically placed in order. And you're going to find out why next week here, hopefully, if God does not come back between now and then, and we'll stay here. Verse verse 15. When the water and the skin in the skin was used up, she left the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down across from him, a distance of about a bow shot. There's a lot of archery in this chapter too, just so you know, which I really like this chapter. For she said to himself, "Let me not see the death of the boy." So she sat opposite him and lifted her voice and wept. Hopelessness. This is what hopelessness looks like if you're envisioning this. This is an individual that has reached their end. They have sat down to die. Not only that, she has sat down to die, and she does not want to see her son die before her. She has committed her son and her to die in the hot sun. I'm sure this would have been the very word that came to her mind as she looked at her situation. I'm sure she looked back at the past few years and said, how did I get to this point? How did it get like this? What did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? I want you to think about something. I want you to turn in your Bibles just a couple chapters back to chapter 16. We're going to look at something because this has got to be what's going through her mind. You got to realize that everybody in this story has a relationship with God. Everybody in this story so far has a communication with the Almighty God. They've been talking. Verse 6 of Genesis chapter 16 says, "But Abraham said to Sarah, 'Behold, your maiden is in your power. Do to her what is good in your sight.' So Sarah treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence." How many of you have had situations in your work environment where someone has treated you bad and you just want to leave work or maybe quit and not come back? Or somebody in your home has treated you wrong or treated you bad or offended you, and you just want to leave the house, shut the door, go to your room, flee. Let's read on. It says, "Now an angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. He said, 'Hagar, Sarah's maid, where have you come from, and where are you going?'" These are the kind of questions we need to ask ourselves before we start panicking in our situation. Where have you come from? Maybe you need to reflect back to a time when things were bad and God carried you through it before. She's an Egyptian. She came out from Egypt, obviously, at some point. Who knows what her home life was before? When she was with Abraham, things were very good, I guarantee you. Abraham was a very wealthy man in those lands, very blessed by God. She was taken care of. Where are you going? We have to think about these things when we start making decisions on our time zone. It's all falling apart. I'm out of here. Where are you going? What is your end? There's a way that seems right unto man, but its end is death. The angel says, or she says in response to the angel, "I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarah." Then the angel of the Lord said to her, "Return. Return to your mistress and submit yourself to her authority." I tell my kids that all the time. When the situation is very bad and they don't want to be around people because of some situation, that's the wrong answer. Go back and go through the situation. Don't run from it. You can't run from your situation. It doesn't work. It's baggage. It trails you. It follows you. Face your situation head on with God. Going back. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants. Anybody pick up anything there? Angel of the Lord, who's there? Jesus. Jesus has come down and is talking to the Egyptian woman, Hagar. This Jesus is going to show up here when we get back to chapter 21 here as well. Jesus is showing up at that moment when you're trying to flee, when you're trying to run from this situation that's falling apart, in this situation that you thought was all put together in your life. You thought you had everything worked out. You thought you had the right job, the money, the perfect family, whatever it is, and you thought you had it all put together, and it's all falling apart. Jesus is right there saying, where are you going? Where did you come from? Don't move. This situation is unavoidable. It's an appointed time that I have set for you to test you, to prove your faith. The angel of the Lord, verse 11. Did I finish verse 10? I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. There's the promise. Verse 11, the angel of the Lord said to her further, behold, you are with child. You will bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. In her mind right there, she is excited. Guess what? I have reason to go back now. I'm with Sarah's husband's child. That was the whole point. I get to go back. I get to be. I'm going to be treated better now. My life is looking better now. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to bear a child. This is a great thing. God has come down. He's talked to me. He says, my child's going to have a mighty nation. That there'll be so many that they won't be able to count them. That he's already given me a name, and the Lord has heard me, and this is good. I'm excited. Have you ever been rafting? Anybody ever been rafting? Raise your hand if you've been rafting. It's okay to raise your hand in church, people. Okay, the first time I asked a question, I got one. All right. Now, rafting is one of those things that's like life with Jesus Christ. Is because we get in this rubber raft, and we're going to be going over dangerous rapids. But we have a guide that sits in the back, and he's got like one paddle. Maybe they got two, I can't remember. But he's got like one rudder paddle back there, and he's guiding you through. And you see up ahead, you see this rapid. And what do? You start, oh boy, that's I don't know if you're class 4, and your heart starts pounding. Well, you start, you start trying to grab the boat, and it's just like this big rubber thing. What do you grab onto? A little tiny rope that's on there that's running around the top? That isn't going to save you. And so your legs are you're just pinching the side of that boat. The person next to you is going, "Let go, dude. You're okay, man." I didn't do that. And here comes this rapid, and it's hitting hard, and you're freaking out, and you're just focused and trying to get. And when you get through, what do? Woo! Yeah! That was awesome. That's a trial with God. That's what it's like with God. But we can't see that. Sometimes the rapids that we get, it's like it might as well be nighttime. Imagine rafting. I think that's what we should do. People that aren't scared of rafting, I'm cool, I can do that. I think you should do it in a like the least amount of moonlight, whatever. Do it at nighttime. Wouldn't that be fun? Oh, yeah. I'm all game. They'll read about us in the news. Dead. Foolish. But that's it. That's life with God. Is like rafting. And Hagar, she thinks she's made it through the rapids, and she's excited. She's on cloud nine. She's heading back into the family. She's pregnant with her maiden's husband's child. She's going to be taken care of, and they're going to feed her. They're going to raise her. Everything is going great until the boy gets about 7 or 8, 9 years old, and the maiden says, and Sarah has a child, and she looks at Hagar and Ishmael and says, I want them out. Abraham now hands her a wineskin, some food, says, I want you to go that way. Her world's falling apart. Her world just in her mind, she now is reflecting back, saying, what did I do wrong? Everything was going great. Everything in my life was put together. I was in my maid's service. She was taking care of me. Her husband was taking care of me. I wanted for nothing. And now here I am under the hot sun, baking to death. Let's read on just a little. I got a couple more verses here in chapter 16. And it says, behold, you are with child, you will bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, and he will live to the east of his brothers. Listen to this. Then she called the name of the Lord, who spoke to her, you are a God who sees. I want you to say that with me together. You are a God who sees. When you are faced with hopelessness, when you are faced with things falling apart, you need to look up and say, you are a God who sees my affliction. You are the God who is looking down from heaven and sees what I'm going through. Hebrews says that we have a high priest that can sympathize with our situation because he's been through it. So not only does he look down and see what we've been through or what we're going through, but he is able to say, I've been there. You know, there's a couple things that you can count on when you're going through a really hardship in your life. You can count on one thing, that somebody has gone through something worse. And that somebody's going to come to you and tell you about it. Oh yeah, let me tell you about it. No, don't tell me about it. I'm going through it right now. You went through it. You know, it's always worse. Oh yeah, mine was worse. Oh yeah, I had a worse. Yeah, let me tell you. I don't want to hear that. Don't do that to people. Just a word of advice. When they're going through something hard, just be there for them. Just be there for them. Pray with them. Don't tell them about your story unless they ask. I don't think Hagar wants anybody to come up and say, yeah, I've been there, burning in the desert. Your son's probably a bow shot away, huh? Yeah, been there. I had 3 kids, all burning in the desert. You'll get out of it. You'll pull through. Don't worry about it. Now, we don't need that. Now, Jesus doesn't operate like that. Jesus comes and he says, hey, where have you been? Where are you going? Let's focus. Remember the promises? Let's focus. This is about your faith. This is about how much you trust me. This is about me being in charge of your life and you putting your full trust in me. Abraham's, he's escaping, man. He's just in the middle of all of this. His faith ain't even barely being tested. This guy's getting over. Sarah's faith being tested. Hagar's faith being tested. We don't see until chapter 22 when God says, hey, dude, it's your turn. So Abraham, through all of this, he's at home just going, oh my goodness. Ishmael's out in the desert. My wife, I got a new son. This is going on. All these things are happening. What do you think he would be doing if he knew that Hagar was out there almost dead and his son Ishmael burning to death out there in the sun? He's probably doing what he's supposed to be doing right now in this situation. He's praying. He's praying to the God who sees his affliction and her affliction. People, let me tell you something. When everything's falling apart, you need to call people to say, hey, pray with me. Just be in prayer with me. I'm going through it bad. Because we serve a God that not only sees, we serve a God that hears as well. Amen? Praise God. Let's go back to chapter 21, verse 17. It says, and God heard the voice of the lad. Whoa, 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 whoa. Back the bus up. Verse 16 says at the end, so she sat opposite him and lifted her voice and wept. And God says he heard the boy's voice. Train up a child in the way they should go and they won't depart from it. Guess what? The lad Ishmael has picked up a few things from his father Abraham, don't you think? I think that young Ishmael may have been crying, but I think he might have been saying a few things. God, help me. I don't think 9 years old is too young to lift your eyes up and say, God, help my situation. Help my family situation right now. Amen? Because we serve a God that sees and we serve a God that hears our affliction. Then the angel of the Lord called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, what ails you, Hagar? What ails you, Hagar? Oh my goodness. Really, Jesus? You don't know what ails me? Yeah, well, it shouldn't be ailing you. You should be going back and you should be looking back at chapter 16, Hagar, when I promised you these things. When I said that your son will be a mighty nation, that they're going to have many decisions, that I am the God who sees your affliction. Remember those things you said? What ails you? Too many times in our life when it's falling apart, we curl up in the corner and we freak out. And Jesus comes down, puts his hand on his shoulder, instead of saying, oh, what's the matter? Are you okay? He says, what ails you? Get up. Get on your feet or get on your knees, one of the two. What ails you? You know when I see the worst of it is when people get offended and they go and they leave the church and they go and they sit in their room and they just pout. I want to be the one that Jesus sends into their room and says, what ails you? He doesn't do it though. He never asked me. Verse 18, arise, lift up the lad and hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him. God says, I'm reaffirming my promise with you. I am here. I am the God that sees. I am the God that hears. I see your affliction. I recognize that you have faith. I'm encouraging your faith by reassuring you your promise. that I gave you. People, when we look back and we think about where we've come from, the very thing that we need to keep in mind is the promises of God. And I've shared that on a Sunday morning, and we've gone through the different promises of God. He will never leave you nor forsake you. He will not abandon you. We need to say these things. We need to repeat them out loud. When we say, you are the God that sees, you are the God that says that you will never leave me nor forsake me nor abandon me. You have great things planned for my life. And when we do that, we're not ailing. We're rejoicing. I mean, yeah, we're hurting, but we're rejoicing in the fact that we serve a God that can deliver on His appointed time. Verse 19, then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin with water and gave the lad a drink. You see, when we start figuring things out, when we start turning things over to God, we start getting the victory, you know what God does? He opens our eyes and says, look at the angels that are surrounding you. Look at how I've hedged you in and I have protected you. Look at how you have no reason to worry. You want to be stress-free. You know where the peace that passes all understanding comes from? It comes from your faith that God will deliver you from your situation. Not just saying, well, I hope God's timing is my timing. No, it's saying, God, in your timing, deliver me. I'll go through this and I'll make it out, and I'm going to continue to push forward in you. You know what? You get peace from that. If you don't have peace in your life, it's because your time zone's messed up. You're operating off an East Coast time zone instead of West Coast. Anybody from East Coast in here? Sorry about that. He opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Very important, people, what she saw. She saw a well of water. Not just any well. A well of water that Abraham himself dug with his own hands, his own people, his tribe. Dug a well in Beersheba, and Abraham sent Hagar that direction. This is a very important well. Comes into play a little later on. I love this next verse. Are y'all excited? Verse 20. And God was with the lad, and he grew, and he lived in the wilderness and became an archer. Woo-hoo-hoo! Praise God for that, huh? I thought it was cool. I don't know about you guys, but he's already talking about a bow shot, and now he became an archer. This is the bow hunter chapter. Whew. Hallelujah. You know it's spirit-filled when it talks about bow hunting. Verse 21, it says, he lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Now, Hagar's story doesn't end there, and we've got to save some of this for next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about setting it apart before it falls apart. We're going to be getting into more of what that well has to do with our life. I have a saying when we're talking about holding things all together. True strength is holding it together when no one would blame you for falling apart. Yes, God holds things together, but we have an active part in doing it. We have a responsibility when it comes to keeping things held together. True strength. We have every reason to throw our hands up and say, I give up. I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm leaving. I'm checking out. I'm abandoning ship. Is standing and saying, no, I'm going to see this rapid all the way through. I've got a guide that knows where he's going. He's got an appointed time. He's got an appointed direction. He knows the rapids. He knows how to negotiate them. I'm better off with him than outside the boat on my own.